It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
From climate engineering to killing fields, the criminally insane and incurably corrupt are in control and have been for so very long. But for how much longer will this be the case? Will they finally be banished, or will they rule over the ashes? The priority of tyrants has always been and will always be to preserve, protect, and proliferate their power at any cost to anyone and anything, including the planet. An obvious and inarguable conclusion for any that are paying attention. Of all the weapons of mass destruction they wield, climate engineering operations, aka weather, chemical, and biological warfare in our skies, are their crown jewel weapons. From orchestrated climate catastrophes to pandemics, populations can be decimated and never even know they were under assault. And nature can then be blamed. In this week's installment of the Bad News Broadcast, the just-released schedule for the coming winter weather warfare in the U.S., while meltdown in the polar regions, the planet's air conditioners, continues to accelerate wildly. Destructive, quote, super shear earthquakes are scheduled for California. New milestones are passed in regard to tree die-off around the world. No more trees, no more people. Simple. Earth's oceans breach yet more collapse boundaries, acidification and plankton collapse. If the oceans die, we die. Devastating droughts and deadly deluges, both hallmarks of climate engineering operations, are accelerating off the scale all over the world, though most of the U.S. population has absolutely no idea about this due to the constant bread and circus and scripted political theater. This must change. Government shutdown, part of the plan. The power brokers are preparing. This includes the military maneuvering within our borders. Political stripes are irrelevant in this equation. The left-right paradigm is an orchestrated illusion with the objective of dividing and polarizing populations and distracting them ultimately from the wider horizon and thus the oncoming train of total collapse. Biosphere collapse and power structure total desperation, summed up by this week's statement from the so-called Secretary of War that there will be no more, quote, stupid rules of engagement, end quote. Does that mean shoot first and ask questions later, even in U.S. cities? From numerous sources, this headline. President Trump says U.S. military should be used to fight, quote, the enemy within. Does that mean the 18-year-old machine gun carrying U.S. soldier deployed to U.S. city streets has a license to inflict his perception of justice on U.S. civilians? Does, quote, fighting the enemy within include the weather warfare that has been and continues to be waged on U.S. farms, towns, cities, and civilians? You decide. On the subject of waging covert war on unknowing populations, this not-so-nice nugget, toxic forever chemical contamination, has been, quote, severely underestimated. How severely? About 4,000% underestimated. Yes, just a slight miscalculation. But not to worry, the new EPA is eliminating testing and disclosure across the board. Hear no evil, see no evil. Pretend the contamination isn't real, and it magically goes away, making America great again, and making America healthy again. Which, of course, includes ignoring our geoengineered filth-filled skies, the fallout of which is contaminating every single breath we take. Not a word. Not from this administration or any other. Before I get to breaking headlines, here's a daunting dose of what's coming. A rewind reminder from this Futurism.com headline from earlier this year. Expert says collapse of human civilization looks like the most likely scenario. End of headline. No, not just, quote, most likely. The extremely near-term total collapse of the current paradigm is baked into the equation and shockingly obvious to any that don't have their eyes wide shut. So, should we just sit down and give up, as so many have long since elected to do? No, absolutely not. Never. Fighting with every fiber of our being to awaken the sleeping masses, to alter the current course, to salvage whatever we can so that some might make it through, isn't just an option, it's an absolute obligation to the Creator of it all. Resolve yourself to break ranks from the head in the sand mobs. Face the gathering storm head on, and you will find a form of solace that can't be taken, ever, by anyone, though many will try. More on the un-United States of cults shortly. Moving on, a new headline source, but an ongoing familiar warning on the dangers of climate engineering from MSN. Polar geoengineering projects could cause severe harm, scientists say. First, again, massive omissions. It isn't just polar geoengineering that is catastrophically dangerous. It's all geoengineering operations, every form, everywhere, all over the world. About chemically engineering winter with patented processes of chemical ice nucleation climate engineering operations from AccuWeather. Winter forecast 2025-2026. Snowy season ahead for parts of the U.S. That's the key word, parts. The report says get your heavy coats, ice scrapers, and snow shovels ready because the start of winter is just a few weeks away. They mean the start of the engineered winter, certainly not the seasonal winter date. AccuWeather lead long-range meteorologist Paul Pastelok, remember that name, Paul Pastelok said, from snowy nor'easters to frigid Arctic blasts, here's what to expect this winter across the U.S. and where drought and warmth may dominate instead. Translation, locations that the weather terrorists decide to cut off the rain from will be warm and dry in the winter. In between, temperature and weather whiplash, the chemical kind. Yes, AccuWeather's Paul Pastelok, a primary climate engineering cover-up actor. Should Paul be sent a link to geoengineeringwatch.org and asked to explain the volumes of data and testing contained there? Or perhaps Paul should be sent a link to the dimming. Sending out that kind of flaming arrow of credible data to individuals like this, and then CCing as many other aware and awake activists as you can, will be a glaring notice to climate engineering cover-up actors like Paul Pastelok that many are listening to the conversation and awaiting his reply. The Weather Channel report continues. Snowfall is projected, aka scheduled, to be higher than last winter in parts of the Northeast, including Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. Let's flash back to 2014 in Boston when they sensationalized all those snow headlines when 14,000 feet up in the Sierras there was no snow in the middle of winter. They never told us that. About Boston, they say, though snow totals may still finish below the historical average as storms during midwinter to late winter may produce a mix of rain and snow rather than just snow. How in the hell would Paul Pastelok know that? Think about it. Let's keep going. December could be especially active around the Great Lakes, where blasts of cold air will fuel heavy lake effect snow. Buffalo, New York, for example, is forecast to receive 90 to 100 inches of snow. This is a primary headline-producing lake effect, aka lake snow machine, climate engineered kind, chemical kind, to produce the kind of images they want so that people that are baking in the middle of winter think, well, it's snowy somewhere, so everything must be okay, which couldn't be further from the truth. Is pile up the so-called lake effect chemically nucleated frozen material, pump out some sensationalized headlines, and ignore the fire season all year, incinerating mountains that were once lush and snow-covered. The report states energy bills could run high as residents in more than a dozen states across the plains and Midwest, seems like they have these states identified already where they want to carry on these operations, turn up the heat during what is likely to be a cold winter. Surface cold, I want to stress that. We're communicating with airline pilots that are seeing temperatures sometimes jump 30 degrees 1,000 feet off the deck. Cold air sinks to the surface just like the open freezer in your market. No top, but that cold air sits in that basin. Same thing with planet Earth. They chemically nucleate a cold layer of air, and that completely confuses the population on the ground as to the true state of climate meltdown. They say the cold will take hold early in December before easing in January. How would they know any of this when a brief thaw is likely with the absence of an Arctic dry air mass? There may be more opportunities for snow later. By February, winter is forecast to return in force, with frigid air expanding across the central and eastern U.S. This is mind-numbing. How could they possibly have this kind of intricate knowledge of what's coming months in advance? There's more. Despite the overall warmth, Pastelok and AccuWeather states, a major blast of Arctic air remains possible in the south. Really, Paul? How in the world would you know this unless you're reading a script? Are you talking about the engineered kind of Arctic blast that created the chemically nucleated blizzard in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast and parts of Florida on January 21st of this year, while it was above freezing and raining in Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia? Nobody said a word about that. The AccuWeather article then states a pattern shift around late January or early February could open the door for a significant cold air event to sweep into Texas and the Gulf Coast. Let's remember the Texas deep freeze about 5 years ago when Dallas was below zero, and at the same exact window of time, it was 33 degrees above zero, above freezing at the North Pole, while Dallas, Texas was below zero. It's not nature. It's climate engineering. Pastelok continued, this will also raise the risk of snow and ice. Don't eat that snow. I don't say that in jest. So, seriously, Mr. Pastelok, the script reading climate engineering cover-up actors now commonly can't get it right an hour ahead of time, and Pastelok magically knows what's coming months in advance? Criminals. Once populations are finally forced to face the full scope and scale of winter weather warfare cover-up by the so-called experts, what will be the public's response? The pitchforks and torches moment? Perhaps we'll soon find out. Final excerpts from AccuWeather. If sea surface temperatures remain above normal just off the west coast for much of the winter season, they're not just a little above normal. There's a stretch about 5,000 miles long of way above normal temperatures. The oceans are superheating, and that is a very bad harbinger for life on Earth, for all of us. Again, for the record, a cubic meter of seawater can contain 4,000 times the thermal energy as a cubic meter of air. As the oceans superheat, the atmosphere will follow. Pastelok then states this about the forecast for the Northwest. Temperature departures can be even higher and precipitation much lower. Why would we have lower precipitation with a superheating ocean? Can't happen that way unless there's a factor we're not being told about. That factor is climate engineering, atmospheric pressure zone manipulation. The atmosphere can carry 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming based on unfiltered frontline data. We appear to be past 3.5 degrees C now. It must rain more overall on a rapidly warming planet. Laws of physics say so. If it's not, there's a factor, again, we're not being told about. That factor is climate engineering. Climate engineers decide where it rains, when it rains, how much, and how toxic that rain will be. AccuWeather then states the warm, dry pattern will be most pronounced across California and the Southwest, where worsening drought and the risk of out-of-season wildfires are expected. They continue. It's all year long now. And for the 40 million people in the Southwest that are going to dry up and blow away when the Colorado River stops flowing, it's coming. By February, the storm track will retreat north. How in the world will he know that? Leaving most of California and the Southwest warm and dry. If the pattern becomes quite amplified, then near record highs are possible, Pastelok said. This guy is nothing less than a mouthpiece for the Matrix. He continues, this will set the stage for worsening drought across the West Coast and Rocky Mountains into 2026. Wow, Mr. Pastelok, you must have a crystal ball or an extensive scheduled weather script. Traitor. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, the End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. Quick footnote for those that truly want to help sound the alarm. Very effective climate engineering awareness raising materials, full color printed materials available on our homepage, which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We also have Geoengineering Watch shirts, now with restock sizes, new colors. Having credible data to pass on is exponentially more effective than pointing at the sky and ranting. Keep that in mind. It's a better key to the door. And we are rapidly running out of time. Or you can share links for free from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Send out a flaming arrow, a credible link to authors of articles like the one I just read, to official agencies, to so-called elected officials. The list is endless. But we must start these spot fires of awareness. Every single day counts. More from the West Coast. Regarding frequency-based tectonic weapons, no, it's not sci-fi, no, it's not speculation, theory, or conjecture. These are patented processes, and these weapons can do profound things, just like an atom bomb. How many people believe that when it happened? So much more that they choose not to believe in because it's simply too scary, right? Science fact, they exist. From phys.org, scientists warn California should prepare for destructive super shear earthquakes. The report then states, we can say with certainty that over the next few decades, we will have multiple magnitude 7 earthquakes in California. Quote, they are coming, end quote. There you have it. They're coming. And the mouthpieces for the matrix manipulators would know, wouldn't they? A frequency weapon transmission focused on a seismically sensitive region can absolutely trigger seismic activity, aka earthquakes. Moving on, about the trees dying all over the world. Here's the latest Ask AI rundown regarding the die-off in North America. Trees are dying across Western North America, particularly in California and the Pacific Northwest, due to a combination of severe drought, high temperatures, and subsequent insect outbreaks and diseases driven by human-caused climate change, they say. AI says. Key tree species effects include firs, pines, white bark pine, significant die-offs occurring in forest lands, and a potential shift toward shrubland and grassland in severely impacted areas, driven by human climate change, says AI. Yes, partially true, but what far larger piece of the tree die-off puzzle is AI, of course, omitting? Climate engineering, biosphere damage, and planetary contamination. Search and view this report title at geoengineeringwatch.org. Geoengineering and the dying of the trees. Learn more. That's how we fight this battle. Learn the fundamental factors. You don't have to learn everything, but learn some primary building blocks of this issue, which will better arm you for the fight to expose it, and we desperately need to expose it. About the tree die-off all over the world, from phys.org, trees are dying at an alarming rate. Researchers need more data to understand why. They just can't understand it. An international group of more than 100 forest researchers reviewing almost 500,000 forest monitoring studies from 89 countries and 5 continents, the researchers found that the main cause of tree mortality is anthropogenic human-induced climate change and its consequences: heat, dry air, and soils, forest fires, storms, and increased insect damage and plant disease. Stop. Again, completely ignoring the most fundamental factor in this equation. Climate engineering, first, is the core causal factor for the total disruption of the hydrological cycle. Ionosphere heater-induced high-pressure heat domes are the cause of the most extreme heating. I'm not saying the planet's not heating from other causes. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying the most extreme factors in this equation are being completely ignored, and insects and fungal infections and all of that is directly related to the toxic rain from climate engineering fallout, which is killing soil microbiome, killing root systems. Thus, the trees die a slow, protracted death. Beetles, for example, are a symptom of a sick, dead, dying tree. All of that ignored by the so-called experts, and I know trees, have loved them since my childhood. At kindergarten, when I was a kindergartner, after recess, they had to come drag me out of the trees because I didn't want to come in. My father was an arborist. I've been around trees my entire life. Continuing into my adult life, I've done 6 major habitat restoration programs, 3 state, 3 federal. I ran all of them top to bottom. Climate engineering is the single greatest factor annihilating forests and fauna around the globe, including crops. We're going to have empty food shelves soon. Climate engineering core to all of it. Again, I'm not denying all the other forms of damage to the planet. We've been horrible stewards of this planet, but how can we have any legitimate discussion of climate, anything from any perspective, without first and foremost addressing the climate engineering, aka weather warfare issue? From mongabay.com, more than half the world's forests fragmented in 20 years. This has profound implications, the report says, for global biodiversity and ecosystem health. Stop, no. The threat isn't 20 years out. It's here, now, kicking in the proverbial front door. And the implications are total. They're omnicidal. It's not, going to be an inconvenience in 20 years. No, we won't be here in that time frame. And that's a statistical mathematical certainty on the current course. Don't care who doesn't believe it. They will soon. From Central Oregon Daily, Oregon old growth trees dying fast. That's the headline. Imploding would be the more accurate term. Next, dead forests have been blanketed with climate engineering nanoparticle fallout, which are very powerful incendiaries. They burn with ferocity. On that note, from the UK Guardian, wildfires are getting deadlier and costing more. Experts warn they're becoming unstoppable. That's their headline. Yes, unstoppable fires. Lahaina and the Palisades fires come to mind. And for the record, firestorms is a more correct term. There's nothing wild or natural about the off-the-charts incinerations around the world. Climate engineering is setting the template for these firestorms. The source of ignition is another subject altogether. What is setting the template for these endless fires everywhere? Climate engineering. Search the engineering wildfires section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Learn more. Next, toxic climate engineering fallout and Earth's collapsing ozone layer, also directly linked to climate engineering, by the way, are decimating insect populations, terrestrial and aquatic. From sustainabilitytimes.com, this new headline, but an ongoing worsening story: insects are going extinct everywhere. That's the headline. This phenomenon, termed the insect apocalypse, suggests that climate change might be a significant factor contributing to this decline. For the record, again, toxic weather warfare is the biggest single factor in this equation, because it also involves not just the highly toxic nanoparticle fallout everywhere, not just the destruction of the ozone layer, which is unleashing incredibly intense UV radiation on planet Earth and over the oceans, UVC radiation, which is very penetrating. So when the plankton come to the upper layers of the water column to feed, they're fried alive. Again, destroyed ozone layer, directly connected to climate engineering. But we also have the frequency transmission manipulation of these particles, which is doing more damage to the insects that remain. We have peer-reviewed study in the case of the bees. They're dying of massive aluminum exposure. What a surprise. They're exhibiting symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in a human being. The bees can't even find their way back to the hive. How long till we can't find our way home? It's coming. Aluminum, a primary element named in climate engineering patents and showing up in every rain test we take at some level. Aluminum toxic to all life forms, by the way, no exceptions. That's bioavailable aluminum, which doesn't exist in free form naturally. Guess where it's coming from? On that note, next headline from Earth.com: toxic forever chemical sites severely underestimated in the U.S. Report states new analysis suggests that while roughly 2,200 sites have confirmed this contamination, as many as 80,000 more are likely polluted but not tested. Well, there you have it. Almost 40 times worse than previously disclosed. That's in the range of 4,000% worse. Just an accidental miscalculation? No, not an accident. From science.org, human impacts on oceans could double or triple by 2050. That doesn't sound good, given the fact that the oceans are almost dead now. How can we double that? Pelagic fish populations down 90%, bluefin tuna populations down 98%, plankton populations in the Atlantic down 90%. How do you double or triple that? We're way past nothing being left. We're past Canfield Ocean. We're past the existence of the human race at that point. Oceans die, we die, and we are far closer than 2050. 2030 would be a much more accurate date. More not-so-fun facts from lifescience.com. Yosemite's glaciers have survived 20,000 years, but we could be the first people to see Sierra Nevada ice-free very soon. Far sooner than this article even states. We're in the exponential phase of abrupt climate collapse, being further fueled by weather warfare. From Spiegel International, polar researchers fear an ecological collapse in the Arctic. It's already there. The research ship Polar Stern spent 2 months in the ice of the Arctic this summer, what's left of the ice. What they found could be evidence of an ecological collapse. No, not could, not may, not might. It is collapse. It's here. Moving on to the other side of the world, from the land down under. This report from the UK Guardian: abnormally hot days may hit Australia's southeast after rare sudden warming over Antarctica. Yes, the sudden, unexplainable warming in the atmosphere above Antarctica. That couldn't have anything to do with the ionosphere heater facility located there, could it? The controllers continue to do whatever they want, to whomever they want, whenever they want, because they can. The majority still don't want to know, but soon they'll have no choice but to face reality. Wait and see. From Wired.com, the world's oceans are hurtling toward a breaking point. Not hurtling toward, have long since passed, would be more correct. Climate change, they say, pollution and fishing are pushing oceans closer to their limits at an unprecedented rate. The pressure of that human impact is expected to double by 2050. This is a follow-up on the earlier article, according to a new study. So much more to this story again. Geoengineering, ozone destruction, UV destroying plankton, fisheries collapsing from superheating, fish trying to migrate wherever they can to get oxygen in the water because the oceans are deoxygenating because they're superheating. We lost something like 10 billion snow crabs in one season because of the superheating seas. They couldn't survive that. And so many in populations continue to go about their life as if it's going to magically work itself out at some point, never looking up, never taking notice of what's taking place in our skies. Again, good luck with the imaginary happy ending. Next headline. From phys.org, Planetary Health Check warns risk of, quote, destabilizing Earth's systems. Wow, that doesn't sound good. Worse, it isn't just a risk. The destabilization is done. It's here. Moving on, next not-so-cheery report. This from MSN. Report warns Earth's vital systems at risk of collapse. Again, this is redundant, but these are different headlines, different sources. Important to understand. You can't hide this much longer, which makes the power structure more desperate and dangerous than ever. They will play bigger and bigger cards. Wait and see. This report states that the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research warned this week that most of Earth's critical life support systems are under threat. No, all of them are. More than 3/4 of the Earth's vital system functions are no longer within safe limits. The report says humanity is leaving its safe operating space and thus increasing the risk of destabilizing the planet. Again, this is like the car that's crashed through the guardrail, hurtling through the air toward the bottom of the canyon, with the occupants of the car only suspecting that they might be in for a very rough landing. And even now, the incurably delusional still believe we can drill our way out of unfolding planetary omnicide. From the UK Guardian, our world is hurtling into climate disaster, and what do politicians give us? Question mark. Oil fields and new runways. Total insanity while the planet's imploding by the day. Next headline, and keep in mind, these are all from this week alone, and there are many more that I can't get to. While the U.S. Matrix media weapon of mass deception and distraction continues to effectively keep the majority population's eyes off of the oncoming train of total collapse. Next headline from the Euroobserver.com, biodiversity loss, extreme weather and water scarcity is Europe's future. The report continues, the biggest challenges will be extreme weather events catalyzed by climate change, biodiversity loss, and insecurity in the water and food system. More than 60% of the species in Europe are in a bad or poor condition. Tip of the iceberg, again, LIO emission, not addressing the climate engineering weather warfare elephant in this equation that's ubiquitously contaminating the entire planet, totally disrupting the hydrological cycle. How can we live in a world where the so-called experts are so incredibly dishonest or criminally ignorant of the very field of study in which we're told they're experts? How can the world be so utterly and totally insane? From the UK Guardian, environmental damage is putting Europe's way of life at risk, says report. EU officials warn climate breakdown and wildlife loss are ruining ecosystems that underpin the economy. Oh, that's all we're worried about, the economy. We don't need to live. They can print money and have been from thin air. How good is that working so far for keeping us alive on a soon-to-be dead, lifeless rock? So many people think if the facade stock market is high, everything will be fine. They're simply feeding normalcy bias until the moment of impact. Money from thin air. From Severe Weather Europe, October 2025 to start the first significant cold outbreak for Central Europe of the season. Same thing, engineered cool down for Europe, pacifies populations. They ignore the brutally hot summers they've had. Europe warming extremely fast, nighttime lows rising twice as fast as daytime highs, and everybody blows it off as soon as they engineer a cool down. Next, alternate source, same theme from Al Jazeera. Climate change wreaking havoc on world's water cycle. That's a report from the UN, actually. Last year's record heat, they say, led to prolonged droughts and extreme floods across the globe. The UN's World Meteorological Organization, WMO, said in a report released this week that the global water cycle is becoming even more unpredictable. Yeah, climate engineering, aka playing God with the weather, will do that. Much more than any other single factor, by far, along with contaminating every bit of rain on the planet, every breath we take. From oceanographicmagazine.com, rapid changes in the Antarctic are a stark warning to the world. From collapsing ice shelves and record low sea ice to threats To fragile ecosystems, researchers warn that Antarctica is now reaching a dangerous tipping point that could accelerate global heating and raise sea levels worldwide. Why do we have a could, may, might here? Where do they think the melted ice is going to go? Again, Miami's spending about $1 billion a year right now trying to keep their streets dry. It's not going to take much more, and there'll be no hiding what's unfolding. From resilience.com, fracking wastewater now endangers both drinking water and the wells that regurgitate the wastewater. What a great idea. Let's drill, baby, drill. Let's make America great again. Let's make America healthy again by contaminating every bit of groundwater we have. Some 9 million barrels a day of shale oil is currently produced in the United States. And this is according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That means between 27 and 45 million barrels of fracking wastewater is also produced each day. In gallons, that's between 1.1 and 1.9 billion gallons. And of course, multiply by 365 days a year and you'll get yearly totals. That's a lot of wastewater, and it has to go somewhere, and that somewhere is groundwater aquifers, so much so that it's starting to interfere with the oil production itself. This is a snake eating its own tail. We are circling the drain, literally, right now. Most of this wastewater is disposed of underground, at first in deep underground wells and now in shallower wells. The deep disposal began triggering earthquakes in Texas, felt hundreds of miles away. Oklahoma has experienced a similar rise in earthquakes due to oil and gas wastewater pumped underground. Think how insane this is. We're talking about hundreds of chemicals, many of them not even disclosed, because the regulators started to move underground disposal to shallower depths in some of these regions. That led to other problems. Wow. Who would have imagined that? Again, please watch Gasland and Gasland 2. You will be shocked, and you won't be a fracking fan anymore. I guarantee it. From UpNorthLive.com, researchers seek public help in study of mysterious lake foam. That's PFAS Forever Chemicals. Researchers from Western Michigan University, in collaboration with the Michigan Geological Survey, are calling on lakefront property owners across the state to report sightings of mysterious white foam on lakes. In addition to all sorts of sources, industrial, farm, we have climate engineering and surfactants, and what else they're putting in the sprayed dispersion mix on any given day over any particular region. We can't know unless we tested in that region on that day, which we obviously can't do. They can do whatever they want, and they are. Surfactants are a part of the geoengineering mix. We see foaming rain, foaming runoff, foam on lakes, foam in oceans, highly toxic foam, as I covered in a previous broadcast. Some of that foam 1,000 times more toxic than the water below it. Think about that. Also from Al Jazeera, Iraq's rivers are drying up. The nation faces water collapse. Farmers and experts warn Iraq's historic rivers are vanishing, threatening survival. Think about that. We have Iranian scientists stating on the record that NATO has been cutting off their rain for 40 years. President of that country, as I've stated before on the floor of the UN, emphatically trying to sound the alarm. NATO cutting off their precipitation. Is that not warfare? Is it any wonder why these people have so much disdain for America with its 800 bases all over the world and wreaking that kind of havoc on countries? Covert weather warfare? That's why they're not going to give this weapon up. And anyone who thinks that those in power are not inflicting exactly the same on the U.S. population needs to wake up and look up. Next, a headline of deception from SciTech Daily. Here's the headline: healing ozone layer could trigger 40% more global warming. The report says researchers warn that when this rebound is combined with rising levels of air pollution, ozone could drive 40% more warming than earlier estimates suggest. Not the atmospheric ozone layer that has allowed life to exist on this planet. Climate engineering, by far, single greatest and most immediate threat we collectively face, sort of nuclear everything. And climate engineering, because it's destroying the Earth's protective atmospheric layer, is making even that factor far worse. We have a large coronal mass ejection, a CME, solar flare. We have grids shut down around the world. Now we have nuclear power plants that can't cool themselves. Now we have lots and lots of Fukushima's. Game over. The report then says life on Earth as we know it could not survive without the ozone layer, which acts as a vital sunscreen, absorbing harmful UV radiation from the sun. Without it, increased UV rays would sterilize the surface. So are they suggesting we get rid of the ozone layer and allow climate engineering to continue as a toxic band-aid to block the sun because we don't have an ozone layer anymore? There's no sanity in any of this equation. None. Zero. The ozone layer isn't getting better. We're getting UVC in the surface. The narrative that the ozone layer is recovering is a total blatant lie. Anybody with a sense of feel can sense the sun burning their skin on surfaces, the bark's being burned off the trees, the cambium layer on the exposed side of the tree. It's killing insects, it's killing plankton. But let's all just pretend it's getting better and that the planet's warming because of that. Really? And let's ignore climate engineering, this massive elephant in the sky that make our skies look like literally something from a science fiction movie. Let's ignore all that. And let's just lie about the ozone layer recovering and then pretending that that's causing the warming. I don't have the words anymore. It's a circus of total insanity, the orbiting asylum. Geoengineering operations, which include extreme and overlapping frequency transmissions, are decimating what little is left of Earth's ozone layer. It isn't hairspray cans as we were lied to about decades ago. No ozone layer, no more life on Earth. Every single day, I curse under my breath at living on a planet where so few people seem to care about not just their futures, but the future of their posterity. What will it take to change that? And for those that do care, and for those that have actually applied themselves to this all-important battle for everything that we hold dear, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 530, October 4th, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of, let's call it weather warfare. It's climate engineering operations, it's weather warfare. Global Alert News aired on a number of AM and FM stations around the country. We pay for this out of pocket, no commercials, no politics. If any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast in order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media absolutely won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcast, obviously for free. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Google making it hard to receive our data as hard as they can. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which fully exposes climate engineering atrocities. 26 million views and counting, still going up, not fast enough. The best way to share is by circulating the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment. All of this helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience, reaching those that still aren't looking up. How do we do that? Start the conversation with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials. They can be found on our homepage. Our only goal: give activists what they need to effectively and efficiently move this fight forward. Our extremely high-quality, full-color printed materials, shocking images, satellite images. You don't need to know anything about meteorology to see the images on those booklets are wrong. They're clearly engineered. And now, with all the cutting and data sets for climate anything, it's going to be all but impossible to find future images. We captured these before NASA could take them off their satellite feeds. They're in our booklet. Picture's worth 1,000 words, as the proverb goes. We have Geoengineering Watch hoodies, shirts, including new blue shirts, photos on our homepage. We have scannable business cards. Everybody accepts those. They have a scan code on them. You can go straight to The Dimming, straight to geoengineeringwatch.org. Very compelling images on that card. Everybody takes those. A bumper sticker, also numerous kinds of bumper stickers. All of these effective tools to strike up a conversation on the climate engineering issue. Reaching a critical mass, only way forward in this fight. If we can expose it, the wheels will turn on their own. Wait and see, as everyone everywhere realizes they are going down on the same ship with the rest of us. They will join this fight. They'll have no choice. If we can expose this, again, we can stop it from the inside out. The key is to awaken our military brothers and sisters and defense contractor families and individuals so that they understand they're literally participating in their own demise. If they don't stand down then, we have no chance. To all those, again, that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering atrocities, my deepest gratitude to you forever. From thenationaldesk.com, sludge with forever chemicals spread on U.S. farms threatens food supply livelihoods. Of course, and not to mention the toxic rain on top of that, the intense UV radiation that's causing stomata on crops and forests to shut so they don't feed on carbon, they don't release oxygen. It's coming from every direction. We don't have long. From this report, every year more than 1 million tons, think about that, of sewage, this is toxic municipal sewage, sludge or biosolids, are applied to U.S. farmlands. How wonderful. For decades, the report states it's been used as fertilizer to provide nutrients to the soil, but this sludge contains PFAS, forever chemicals, toxic forever chemicals, that have been linked to cancer and a long list of other degenerative diseases, and are now invading our food supply through the very farms that nourish us. And now the report states, just as the United States was on the verge of action to address the risk, there's a high-level effort, aka from the administration, to stop it entirely. Fertilizer teeming with toxic PFAS forever chemicals being spread across tens of millions of acres, where it's absorbed by crops, eaten by livestock, and showing up in produce, milk, meat Americans consume. Some levels of those chemicals are 2,000 times higher than the EPA's safety limit. There's no safe limit for a toxic substance, keep that in mind. And it's 2,000 times higher than even that safe limit. So let's ponder this. There's a high-level effort in Congress originating in the Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Subcommittee under the leadership of Chairman Mike Simpson to actually stop working on this issue entirely, shut down the process, and prevent any future investigation, assessment, action by the EPA. Well, so much for making America healthy again. Look here, don't look there. Let's take the red food dye out of some cereal, some Fruit Loops, while we're completely ubiquitously contaminating the planet from the skies, slinging sewage sludge on our crops. What a circus it all is. Yeah, let's make America healthy again. There's more. This one from the New York Times. Defense Department delays cleanup of PFAS forever chemicals nationwide. The new timeline could slow cleanup in some communities by nearly a decade. No, that means it's done. They're never going to clean it up. The chemicals widely used in the military also are linked to cancers and other health risks. Of course they are. You think the military cares about the soldiers? Really? Some forts like Fort Lejeune, I think it was, that had toxic water for 40 years, they never told anybody? Government agencies are now even banning terms that can't be used. So let's all just pretend pollution, climate collapse, none of it exists and you're not allowed to use the terms. And in the meantime, the relentless and ruthless pursuit of carbon fuel continues. From AP News, Trump administration opens more land for coal mining, offers $625 million to boost coal-fired power plants. From Axios.com, Trump pushes coal to feed AI-powered demand. What a great idea. Also putting dilapidated, decommissioned nuclear plants like 3 Mile Island back online to feed AI. We are hurtling toward total collapse. The crosshairs are obviously on Venezuela to take their oil, and there's other reasons in that equation too. I'm not going to get into that on this broadcast, but none of them benevolent. None. Moving on, from multiple sources, UAE chips deal linked to $2 billion investment in Trump family cryptocurrency firm, because that's what the presidency is about, right? Here's another headline, this one from the Collapse Chronicle. Trump family wealth surges to $10 billion in Trump's second term. That's about $5 billion increase since his second term took off. From the report, fueled by crypto speculation and Gulf state deals, the Trump dynasty has turned the presidency into a profit engine while constitutional guardrails are eroded. No, they're being blown apart. There's more. From Jacobin.com, pro-Trump billionaires are consolidating media control. And no, they're not just consolidating it, they're completely monopolizing it. And Trump's just a puppet, just like Biden was a puppet, just like Obama was a puppet, and all the rest before them, all the way back to John F. Kennedy, who was the last one to actually draw a line in the sand. He didn't live much longer, did he? Let's cut to the core of the human dilemma. From JohnMinadu.com, Died of Delusion, the fate of modern civilization. The collapse of modern human civilization is inevitable. Anyone who doesn't accept that knows no history. Collapse will almost certainly come as a dreadful shock to most people, triggering global panic, mass migration, societal failure, wars, plagues, and probably far worse. Wealth will vanish in the blink of an eye, as will food. We live in a culture of cults, each completely committed to their own delusions. From CollapseChronicle.com, Cults and Culture. Cults are a mirror in which we can see more clearly focused aspects of the wider culture, the process by which the norms, values, ideas, and shared perceptions of a society are passed down from generation to generation, and by our conforming, we become, quote, cultured. Again, the four factors characteristic of cult phenomenon are compliance with the group, dependence on a leader, avoidance of dissent, and devaluation of outsiders. I'm choosing to bypass numerous biosphere collapse reports because if the country of cults dilemma isn't understood and altered, we have no chance of changing course and no chance of stopping the weather, biological, and chemical warfare in our skies. Most of us probably believe that unlike members of cults, we think for ourselves and act on our own volition. This is, in fact, in all likelihood, far from the case. Not only does most of our behavior derive from post-hypnotic conditioning, but as social beings, we easily become vulnerable to automatic group behavior. Group behavior pattern is established very early on, starting with the family. We comply with the way the family operates because to survive, we conform. Our parents are our first leaders. We compete with our siblings within the family groups, exhibiting jealousies and rivalries and so on. When we grow up, we generally become independent in some ways, but unless we're weaned from the dependency programming, the primitive pattern remains, largely unperceived by the vast majority. As adults, much more than we usually realize, we still depend on leaders, parent figures, or others to look after us and to help us make decisions. The excuse of, "I was only following orders," is the adult equivalent of, "Mom or Dad told me to do it." Social psychologist Stanley Milgram famously showed in his experiments on obedience that when we obey someone we believe to be an authority, we don't see ourselves as being responsible for our actions, however cruel they may be. This basic pattern of group behavior is found all over the world and in many other animals as much as in us. Such behavior arose out of the survival value of living in packs and herds. In earlier times, people cast out of the pack or herd or tribe would die quickly, eaten by predators or succumbing to starvation. Survival chances were much higher as a member of a group that could act collectively for protection. So don't be an outsider is an instruction from our genes. And that's a primary reason why, whatever environment we find ourselves in, we learn what behavior is expected of us by imitating others and adhering to this approach, which the vast majority does most of the time. The enormous power of the group is evidenced in the fact that if we witness a mugging or attack in the streets, we're more likely to help if we witness it alone rather than in a crowd or a group. Many studies have confirmed this. This is often the case because if others are around, we look to others for cues on how to behave. Sad but true. As undeveloped people, unless trained otherwise, we resort to the primitive pattern of looking for someone else to take responsibility. All traditional religions, which most of us don't think of as cults, show the cult-like tendencies of idolizing leaders and preventing independent thought. Cult leaders demand loyalty and suppress criticism. For them, power must be absolute. Authoritarianism takes precedence over anything else. If a member of the cult begins to break ranks, to criticize or disagree, they may be disowned or eliminated, literally. Cult leaders often claim, quote, special knowledge, secret ancient doctrines, or divine revelation is guiding them. It's not hard to see how this pattern is developed out of a natural process that began in the family and the tribe. A child is more likely to die if it doesn't obey its parents, who are, we would assume, more aware of dangers in the environment than the young. As people grow up and the society they live in becomes more complex, individuals with expertise had to give direction and to be followed and obeyed. And in certain circumstances, that's how businesses work. Military operations run this way, schools are structured this way, and countries are governed in this way. But cults, because they only serve the leader or leaders, exploit and pervert various forms of cultural programming. This is why so many politicians become obsessed with secrecy, cutting people out of the loop, seeking scapegoats, and rarely answering straight questions with straight answers. There is yet another reason real democracy is extremely rare in human activity. It's because there are always people who understand all too well that taking power is easier than asking for it. The vast majority, sadly and alarmingly, give up power easily. Whatever we might like to think about ourselves, actively or passively cooperating with tyrants, cults, or cult leaders is much more the norm than the exception. Cults use numerous methods of indoctrination to keep cult members committed. Alternative information about other ideas or other sources of information that may question cult doctrine are banned and denigrated. Cult ideals are endlessly promoted. The entire medical profession, for example, operates like a cult. Medical students quickly realize they have to show allegiance to their hospital, and consultants may demand absolute loyalty from their teams. Many victims of medical accidents have claimed that the tendency of doctors to stick together makes it impossible to pursue a justified grievance. Similarly, it takes great courage for a member of a hospital staff to become a whistleblower, knowing of the ostracism that may well ensue, that most likely will ensue, from the entrenched management. Whistleblowers in all fields, despite benefiting the common good, tend to lose their jobs, or worse. The cult devalues outsiders, including those from other cults or anyone who criticizes them. This view can harden even further to outsiders are evil. We are righteous and right. Everything is seen in black and white. No successful cult ever proclaimed we may be wrong. Once outsiders are declared to be evil by a cult, it's a simple step to rationalize and attempt to legitimize whatever the cult feels it needs to do to destroy the perceived evil or outsider. Even torture and killing can become a sanctified activity. This pattern is absolutely undeniable throughout history, and it's absolutely undeniable today. Consider, for instance, the appalling intolerance and cruelty of so many conquering people towards those they overrun, past and present. Even our own government, steeped in the cult of patriotism, pretend patriotism, sanctify cruel and inhuman behavior towards anyone they regard as possible threats. Not necessarily threats to their own populations, but threats to the unchecked power of those who actually control governments from behind the curtain. A false sense of righteousness or fabricated facade of righteousness always makes perpetrators feel good while doing shameful acts to others or committing atrocities beyond belief. Cult behavior always employs emotional arousal to prevent objective thinking. Cults can be, and in so many cases are, so big that they are rarely recognized for what they actually are. A disturbing but undeniable reality is that the vast majority of individuals will look the other way from any atrocity, no matter how horrific, if they believe that doing so will preserve their personal paradigm for another day. What an incredibly sobering realization to be forced to face the fact that we live in a world in which the vast majority are morally challenged at best, and in so many cases morally bankrupt, willing to actively or passively participate in any and all lynch mobs or atrocities of the brown shirts if they believe they can keep their own neck out of the noose for another day. So-called civilization, societies of countless cults, cults which teach far too many that it's okay to look the other way, no matter how many tens of thousands of innocent civilians, most of which may be women and children, are being eliminated, unalived, if that term is even allowed now in America, a land of the no longer so free and increasingly blind by choice. And what has been the premise for the latest undeniable annihilation? The actions of yet another cult that has been supported, funded, and facilitated by the first cult for the last 2 decades, a fact of record. Doing so provided them the excuse they have long since sought to clear the land with bombs and bullets supplied by the so-called superpower country that they seem to have complete control over, a country that has also long since been a nation of cults. In summary, collective stupidity can be and generally is amplified by groupthink tendencies that are so deeply ingrained in so much of the human race. The deep desire to fit in, no matter the cost or moral sacrifice, and to be accepted by the chosen group. These are primary tendencies which fuel so many forms of collective insanity. In post-apocalyptic movies, the overall environment always seems to be functional. There's trees, wildlife, birds, clouds, rain. Yes, such films almost always show some scenes of abandoned and overgrown cities, but not lifeless, scorched earth Venus syndrome. That term is not a metaphor, and that is exactly the path we're on. Yes, the horizon is dark indeed, but not yet black. But whatever comes, choosing to dedicate oneself to what's right for the sole reason that it's right will always be right. That's unshakable solace, the kind that can never be taken. The first and most important leap we can collectively make in the right direction is to fully expose the weather warfare atrocities. If we can do that, we have a real chance of halting it and allowing the planet to respond on its own to the damage already done. That could at least buy us time, and that's worth fighting for till the brutal, bitter end. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. We are late in the game. Every single day counts. Please make your voice heard while it can still make a difference. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from Geoengineeringwatch.org.